It says there's two people watching this stream, and I have to assume one of them is me. If there's somebody else watching, if you could just type anything into the comment box so that I know that it's working, that would be awesome, whoever it is that's also watching. I didn't know it was already going to go live for real. Hey. Thanks, Brenda. I'm going to get the hang of this and be like a real professional someday and know what the heck I'm doing. So, hi, Brenda, and I guess anybody else who watches this later, because I think it should be available to watch later. Welcome to the second episode of the Not So Secret Songwriter Society podcast. This is the show where I am your host, and thankfully, apparently I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to go ahead anyway. First of all, I should issue, I guess, a mea culpa, an apology. If you were hoping to see another episode much sooner than this, I was hoping to make another episode much sooner than this. This has been a crazy summer. Life has kind of gotten really busy. And I'm doing the best I can. Coming up soon, I'm going to be plotting out a whole bunch of times that I expect this podcast will happen, hopefully on a weekly or semi-weekly basis, but I'll have them all scheduled out in advance so there's no more excuses. And therein lies a good lesson for any other fellow creatives watching. I've found, at least in my experience, that having deadlines can be really powerful. It's really important to a lot of creatives, just setting a deadline and knowing that it's there. And I failed to make this more often because I didn't set deadlines. I've just been trying to keep up with the gigging schedule, which has been remarkably busy in spite of the whole the thing that's going on that I don't think you're allowed to speak out loud on YouTube, lest the YouTube gods decide that you're a heretic and must be removed. So, yeah, this is episode 2. I can say, brag on myself, I have been writing a little bit. Although I didn't write anything specifically for this episode. Maybe we'll do a little bit of improv later. I do want to get to an interview that I taped well in advance. I taped this interview like a month ago thinking, I'll put this on the podcast later this week. And then like a month happened. and here we are. But better late than never. And Fabian, if you're out there and you watch this, sorry for not being a little bit more on top of things with like promoting and getting this out really quickly, but hopefully you understand, and I'm sure you'll be welcome to come back on in the future. So my friend Fabian Qamar is the guest star of this podcast today. We did a video conferencing interview like a month ago, and I'm going to play that for you in a second. But first, I'm going to play the video clip that he sent me of what he was working on. He just sent me a little sample of something that he was writing. And it's been quite a challenge to put this all together and learn how to record media, import media files, and work with all the software, and this is all brand new territory, so thanks so much for your patience while I learn how to do what I'm doing. But I think a good theme of this podcast is that one of the things you got to do is not be afraid to fail. Just go for it, and then you'll learn as you go. So come learn with me. I have to step out of the frame for a second so that I can get over to my computer and switch the scene. So just hang on. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Walking between the microphones is really awkward. Okay. Here's the clip. Fabian.
All right. This is just a little window into my process and something I'm working on, a project I'm working on. So I have a text that I'm crafting for part of it, and then I have text and music that I'm crafting a little way into it. The title is Made Me Smile. It had been a hot minute with way too much in it to look for things to feel good about. Within, so much I was without. But you saw me, lifted up my heart, just simple words, but that was the start. 5 seconds, open soul, kind face. Less dark, less cold, new place. Didn't smack me upside the head. Didn't make me forget what I read. Didn't care if it had been a while. Didn't ask, you just made me smile.
Ta-da! So that's just a short clip that he submitted of something he was working on, and then I'm going to play our interview, which buckle up, because once we get chatting, we can chat for a while, but it was really, really interesting. So here we go, without further ado. Okay. So I just watched your clip. Oh, and I apologize in advance because I didn't realize until just now there's going to be a horrible echo that I don't know why it's there or how to fix it, but sorry, I did the best I could. Okay, so I just watched your clip. That was really good.
Yay.
Yeah. Do you usually write the words or the music first?
For me, it depends. Lately, I've been doing more words first for stuff that has words. When I was like 17 and like writing my first stuff, I tended to start with music first, and I'd be playing something, and my dad would be like, what are you writing about? Like, what are you talking about? And so lately I've been starting with words first, just because in general I'd like to start with some sort of meaning for something I'm trying to say. And so yeah, so lately it's been words first. But then it's like I'm making things fit, because I might write a lyric or write like a chorus or part of a verse that I like, but then once I get a musical idea, I might have to bend things a little bit to make things fit or make syllables line up or whatever.
Okay. You have written things where you start with the music first?
Yeah. Yeah, I have.
What's different about that? Or what have you noticed that really changes the process or the outcome?
I think if I start with the music first, I'm trying to I'll try to say more sort of maybe subliminally. It's not quite the right word, but I'll try to say more with the music what I'm trying to get across. Whereas if I start with the text first, I might try to say more with the text and then have the music kind of clothe it. But if I'm starting with the music first, I mean, you know, you're always trying to make, for me, I'm always trying to balance them both if I'm dealing with both. But if I do start with music first, I think probably I would try to sort of infuse the music with more meaning, like get you to feel something or get you to experience something just by the choice of pitches or the harmony that I use. Yeah, I guess that's how I would answer that.
That's interesting.
Is it different? Is it different for you?
I don't really know. I do it both ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes the music comes first, sometimes it's words,
Yeah.
sometimes it's an idea or a concept. I think it's really interesting that you say, at first when you described your dad walking by saying, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Was that things that, or what are you talking about, I think is what you said?
Yeah.
Those were ideas you were playing with that were just musical, or did they have words?
Yeah, I no, I think in those times that I can remember him saying that, those were times where I was just playing music without lyrics.
Hmm.
And sometimes it was intended to be music without lyrics, but I was in a place at that point in my life where I think I was just more excited about the musical things I was discovering,
Hmm.
um, such that I wasn't really thinking about what sort of message what I was saying with the music. I was just like, oh, this is a cool chord. These are cool combinations of things, which I think I still think is fine, and I still do that. But um, yeah,
So his question to you, like, what are you talking about, was about what is the music that you're making about?
yes,
It was very much a challenge against randomness.
yes, yes, very much a challenge to drive me toward being intentional.
Hmm.
Same thing with like improvisation, because I mean, you know, people often use the analogy, the comparison or the analogy of music being like a language, and that improvisation is very can be considered very close to writing or composition. It's just that like when you compose something, you write something, you actually sort of set it down more, whereas improvisation is you don't necessarily write it down, it's more happening in real time. Um, but but a similar thing, like a lot of times, at least in my experience for myself and when I hear other people, when they are working on improvising, whether that's jazz or in more classical place or in church music or any place, when they're newer, they sometimes will they'll try to like use a lot. They'll like have a lot of use a lot of notes, a lot of harmonies, a lot of just kind of like blah, 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 throw a lot at you. And this myself as well. Whereas I think a lot of times the more experience someone gets speaking musically, um, the more you learn to say more with less. And you can like you can throw a lot out there, but you don't have to get what you're saying across.
Yeah. Reminds me of Abraham Lincoln said, "I'm sorry I couldn't write a shorter letter."
Yeah.
Do you ever have musical ideas that are just like they just come to you and it's just the musical idea and you don't have any idea what it's about, or like what words you would write to it?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Do you ever
Um,
use those?
yeah, I do. Yeah, I think something I'm still learning is um, what what ideas, whether that's musical or lyrics. I'm still learning what ideas are worth pursuing and what are just like either not worth pursuing or more like something that needs to be worked through a lot before it's something that I want to move forward with. Like what stuff, like I used to have the idea that I just kind of want to save everything, every idea I have, like, oh, I need to preserve this somewhere, I need to use this somewhere.
Yeah, I have
And
a
now
box. All
and
sorts of
now it's
scraps of
like,
paper.
yeah, it's for now for me, it's like, that'd be nice, but realistically, I'm probably not going to use every idea that I ever have. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, if I do, if I do have a musical idea, but I don't know exactly what it's about, or if I want to put lyrics to it, I guess I'll record it first of all. A lot of times I used to write it down. Now I usually just like do a voice memo on my phone or something, so that I have it, and I just sort of
Voice
name
memos
it.
are awesome.
They're amazing, and yes, as long as you can get them off your phone when you need to. But I'll just do something like that. I'll just I'll just kind of um, record it somewhere, and then come back to it and play with it and see where it seems like it wants to go, or what it might fit with. I don't know. Sometimes the process can be very organic, I think, and sometimes you can get away with it being a little more mechanical if it works. Like, hey, I had this idea from 2 months ago that I didn't know what it was for, but what if I put it with this new idea that I have now that wasn't related to it at the time? I don't know. See what happens.
I remember a Ben Folds interview where he talked about how he, or maybe it was Billy Joel, or maybe I heard it from both places. I honestly don't remember. but one of them or both of them talked about saving every idea that you have somewhere. He used Allentown as an example. He wrote the music. He thought, this is cool, da 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 da, and it was like, but he couldn't come up with anything really meaningful or interesting to say with it.
Yeah.
The sky is blue, the dirt is brown. So then eventually he came across, I want to write about this, the mining jobs going away in Pennsylvania in this town, and so he said, oh, that idea, I remember that from a few years ago. He started writing some lyrics. He's like, that's really good. So the moral of the story was save everything.
Yeah. I think there's value to that.
Yeah. Although, like you, I highly doubt that I'm going to go back and use all of the things that I save.
Absolutely everything. Yeah, but that's okay. The other thing I would say is sometimes if it's a musical idea first for me, I might come to it more as a listener afterwards and ask, like, what does the music seem to be saying? Like, is there like a feeling or an idea that the music seems to maybe be trying to say, and see where that leads. Yeah.
I will say for my own experience, it seems like everything that I write just starts out as, those two chords sound cool together. That's so seldom that I have ideas that are, I had this bad breakup and I'm gonna write about it, or like specific, deep, meaningful things. I don't know if that's weird. That's partly what I want to find out. Is that? Would you say that's an unusual occurrence for you?
What is?
Starting an idea from just like those two chords sound cool together, or some place that's really a lot less meaningful, or just kind of screwing around.
I would say at the place where I am right now at this moment in my life and my young career, it seems like it's more rare for me. But I don't know if that will always be the case. I mean, I love to just sit down at a keyboard and try things, and yeah, I mean, I always love to sit down and be like, oh, what would happen if this went to this, or what would happen if this harmony that's usually used this way, or like, what if I stripped this down so it was like just a lot more simple? Um, so I don't know. I mean, for me right now, I think I feel like for me to create, I'm needing to start from a place of something that has some sort of meaning, more specific meaning, I guess. Um, but that's where I am right now, and I still love to tinker. So
Without pushing you to share more than you're comfortable with about this particular clip
yeah,
that you're sharing on the
yeah.
podcast, I want to ask, what is it about? However deep you want to go into what it's about.
Sure, yeah. So, well, of course, the initial sort of impetus for me to write this actually is thanks to you, because you talked about wanting to do this kind of a project where people are writing and sort of letting others inside of the process, and so that was a great sort of impetus to be like, what can I write that I could present, let people inside of what I'm doing. So that was sort of the starting point, for just ground, starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as meaning, I started from a place of like, um, what's going on in the world right now, from my perspective, what's going on in the lives of people I know. Um, you know, everyone that I know and that I see is dealing with a lot of unusual circumstances and times right now, and I know plenty of people who are just facing a lot of challenges and stuff. And so I thought, okay, what if I could write something about that, you maybe not you're not you have been kind of down, maybe you're not having a great day, but you encounter something that makes you smile, whether that's some like an interaction with a person, or a memory, or
Hmm.
something beautiful you encounter, or good you encounter in the world or in nature,
Hmm.
or yummy food. I don't know, something that makes you smile. And I thought, what could I build a song around this concept of just like, a lot of things suck right now, but there's something made me smile. So that's sort of the meaning place I was coming from. Um, and then I was like, okay, stylistically, what feels right? So when I sat down to the keyboard to try to come up with something, so I wrote some of the lyrics. I think I started with the chorus. Um, uh, Maybe I started with this little lick, and I was like, something sort of bluesish sounds right, because if you're dealing with challenges and things are kind of dreary, like, it just makes sense. And then I think I started with the chorus, and um, thinking of some sort of expressions that people like my dad would use, like something smacking you upside the head. So I was like, maybe I can throw that in there somewhere. And that became like, didn't smack me upside the head, etc. And then I just tried to like, I sort of started plotting out like, well, what would I want to say in a verse leading up to that? What would I want to say in a second verse? Um, and Yeah, it sort of got bluesy. I was thinking of some of those musical vocabulary that someone like a Nora Jones would use. I'm a big fan of.
Hmm.
Um, and I found in some of the verses, and I think on the clip I recited the text from the first one that I don't have the music to yet. But some of the verses, some of the rhymes, I discovered that I was starting to be influenced by having just watched Hamilton recently. I was like, wait a minute. And just like there were just like certain rhythms or cadences in the speech that I sort of felt like I had permission to use because they were bouncing around in my my mind, which is interesting. Like
Yeah.
that's always interesting to me. Like not where you are at a certain time you're writing something, what's going on in the world, where you just came from, who you were talking to, what you've just listened to. Um, so
It's kind of embarrassing for me to tell this story about myself, but there was that's kind of what the podcast is about. There was a summer not that long ago, for like a month, I just everything I felt inclined to write was a rap of some kind.
yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of rap at all. That's not me. I'm not that guy. I'm not a hot MC spitting mad lyrics. That's not Thomas. But I knew exactly why it was. It was because I had taken a deep dive into Macklemore's music for like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And now that was like all I could think about.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about how much we should look to like other art or other artists for inspiration? Like I know some people that like to listen to a lot of music, or like go and see like visual arts, film, etc., read poetry to like get inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And then but I also am aware of other people who are just like, when I write, I like don't listen to anything, I don't read anything, I like go lock myself up in a cabin somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. For me personally, I don't know. I think about that a lot too. And I don't think I've ever really talked about it with anybody. That's a really good question. I remember I've sort of cataloged in my mind. I saw an interview with John Lennon where he was talking about you have to be, if you're making music, then you can't be listening to other people's music. Like as though they're like antithetical to each other. On the other hand, I do think that it's kind of like the act of listening to something else means that you're not producing, you're not creating anything. But I do think everybody has their influences, and nobody creates art in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It is interesting in the artist's way. Julia Cameron talks about reading deprivation, and she recommends not only do you shut off the TV and the radio, but computer devices, magazines, newspapers, fiction books, and anything that would qualify as mental bubblegum or just something that's kind of distracting. And she says do that on purpose. Use reading. She calls it reading deprivation. Like don't even read stuff while you're writing. If you're on a tear, if you want to spur some creativity, give yourself a period of time that you just kind of go on a fast from all sources of input. And then there's also George Lois in his book Damn Good Advice. He says that he has a ritual of going to the art museum once a week just to get inspiration. I think it's the kind of thing that Julia Cameron would call filling the well. So that's kind of the opposite idea of don't listen to anything or watch anything.
Right.
But I think everybody's inspired by different things.
Yeah.
So I think it has to kind of come down to a personal thing. It's like, well, what do you find inspires you and motivates you, and what do you find takes away from your motivation?
Right. What sort of feeds you and what's more of a distraction?
I remember seeing an interview with Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day, who was talking about the process Actually, I've seen a couple interviews where he talks about his process of writing. One where he says that he used to write lyrics while he was going on walks. Um, Actually, it's really interesting. I happen to know Beethoven used to go on walks like every day
Yeah.
regularly. There's something about walking that seems to
Yeah.
be important to a lot of people's creative
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
He also described the process of writing one of their songs as we were just watching a bunch of YouTube videos about this subject, and so we wrote a song about it. So it's like, well, I guess that was productive. That was inspirational to them. So,
Yeah.
um,
So
I,
it might depend on the person, what they need creatively to come
yeah,
up with something.
I think everybody's different, but that's part of what I find fascinating, and I'm trying to understand that process and the different factors and what motivates me and myself, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
I was just gonna say, if we go back to the comparison of language, if we say music is a language, well, language doesn't exist in a vacuum either. Like you have to learn how to speak, and then you have to some degree, learn what other like be aware of what other people are saying, like how different dialects work, and like what your native language is, like if you're doing a second language or foreign language, there's that. So like if you're writing something in words, I mean, that's I'm not primarily a wordsmith, but if you're doing that, like to what degree are you drawing from what other people are saying and what other people have said in the past, and what degree are you drawing just from like ideas that seem to come just from yourself?
mhm.
um, and it's probably, I don't know, it's probably a little both, but again, it depends on the person maybe, and it depends on your project, depends on, yeah, a lot of things.
Something I noticed about your lyrics is that there's a lot of details in them.
Ah, that's good.
Uh,
I take that as a compliment.
yeah, well, it's meant as a compliment. One of the hardest things to do, I think, or I find for myself when I'm writing a song, is to try to inject enough detail to keep it interesting, because I always
Yeah.
have that voice in the back of my head, the censor that keeps saying like, okay, but is everybody going to care? Are you writing this for everybody? Can you
Right.
make it more general so that it applies
Right.
to the general population?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, do you really want to be that vulnerable in what you're saying, that you're including these specific details and telling everybody exactly what happened? Or,
Right. Right.
it's easy to forget that it's not like the details have to be 100% accurate.
Right. Sure. Of course.
Because it's an art. I mean,
Right.
you're telling a story. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I noticed that there's a lot of details in your piece, in your lyrics, and I'm wondering, are they mostly literal? And also, are your lyrics or the words that you write in your music usually, do you find that they are literal choices, like this is exactly literally what happened? Do you tend to tell literal stories, or do you use a lot more abstract and poetic language?
Hmm. Um. Hmm.
I find that I usually have real trouble breaking out of the whole literalness of it all.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to tell the story as it happened. It's like I have
um.
no imagination.
I don't think I. Hmm. I don't think that I feel the need to be literal
Hmm.
with. I don't feel that I feel the need that to have every lyric that I write be something that literally happened exactly as I say it. Um, like as I'm working through this one, um, there are aspects of it things that I'm experiencing and that I see other people experiencing, but there are aspects of it that, are like almost like an historical fiction type thing where it's like it's something that is an example of something that I either is happens to me recently or that I see happening to other people, but it's not like this happened on this date at this time. So I don't think that I feel the need to be literal, and like not like literal, like nonfiction, literal, like this happened and this is exactly how it happened. And to the second part of what you were asking, I think, I don't know, for me, I don't have trouble sort of trying to like imbue like layers of meaning into lyrics. So I sort of enjoy trying to say something without saying it, or like to say something that could be taken two or three different ways, or like to say something that has like to choose my words based on sort of like the shade of meaning or like emotion that they convey. Like if you say, I don't know, if you say to someone, like if you ask someone like, would you do this, or could you do this, or did you do this, like there are like, you know grammatical and definition, there are differences, like sort of just like literally between what those mean, but there's also like a difference in tone for me. A lot of times I probably should say to someone, um, would you do something, but sometimes I'll say could you, just because the tone is different. So I don't know, that's not a problem for me to sort of kind of go beyond the literal. I sort of enjoy that. Yeah.
I've found that my biggest struggles have been for a long time trying to get away from literal language
Hmm.
and trying to get away from general language. I want to
Hmm.
be more abstract and specific.
Seems like a paradox, though, right? That's really interesting.
do you
That's
ever
fascinating.
try do you ever try like having some random words or like trying to find meaning in some random words, the way that we talked about
Hmm.
writing music where you're just kind of screwing around and you find something that's like, oh, that's neat. Do you ever start with like just a phrase that's really cool or some random
Hmm.
words? I've One thing that I've tried in the past is just kind of sitting down and writing out a whole bunch of the most interesting random words I could think of.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the key thing was that all of them had to be like really odd and moving and like juicy
Hmm.
words, like
Hmm.
either emotional or really specific kind
Yeah.
of words, or just something that's like
Hmm.
I wouldn't automatically go there just to try and get my brain moving. And another thing
Yeah.
that I still am trying to do is um, right now in my writing process is I'm trying to come up with something that I'm trying to write about. So I have a concept, I have an idea, a story, or a specific emotion or something, and and then I have a program called Word Palette. It's an app on my iPad, and it'll display a bunch of rows of sort of random letters that are picked by an algorithm to try and be related to whatever you're writing.
Hmm.
And I'll go through and I'll pick out the words that just seem the most interesting and
Hmm.
emotionally moving until I have just a paragraph of words that
Hmm.
are related to the concept in my mind for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And then
Yeah.
I tried writing lyrics around those words. And
Yeah.
I've found some
Wow.
success with that method.
That's fascinating. I'd like to try that. I have not played with words in that way. That's fascinating. I think the closest I've come is, um, maybe maybe playing with what words I choose based on like the sounds in them, like what the consonants and the vowels are, or like the rhythm of them, like how they flow, or if I'm doing like something that's a group of three, which one do I mention first? Like which sounds good first, or which one do I want to end with? That's fascinating though. No, I haven't done that. Of just tinkering with words in such an abstract way, the kind of the way that I do with pitches. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Great idea. I'm gonna play with that.
Well, I'm really curious about you got to a lot of details, and it
Yeah.
was and I didn't really think about it very hard, but I do think that your word choices, I can see that in your writing, that you were talking about just kind of having a flow to the words, and you would say probably that that's typical for your writing, and not just because you watched Hamilton recently.
No, I think it is typical. I think um like I said, I think certainly the fact that I had watched it recently certainly was a factor. And had me thinking more about that, because that's at play so much in that music. But yeah, I would say for me that's typical to be thinking about how the words are gonna fall off of my tongue, how they're gonna come out of my mouth.
Do you think you think about that more than the meaning of the words, or the other way around?
Mm, I think I probably well, I think I probably think about meaning more, but maybe like 2/3 meaning and like a third what they sound like, what the words sound like. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I've been spending a lot of time, like with this one in particular. I found myself spending a good amount of time in a thesaurus, and like, okay, like
Hmm.
what what's an equivalent word for saying this? Um, and I spent plenty of time too in like what word rhymes with this, because like I loved the rest of the verse, but I couldn't get something that rhymed quite like I wanted it to. Um, and sometimes I'd switch it out, if I,
Yeah.
so the
I
detailed thing is interesting though. Go
I
ahead.
have found that the thesaurus and the rhyming dictionary have been really helpful with my
Yes.
songwriting.
Yes. Yeah. Because sometimes you get like, oh, everything else is great, but you just get to like one word or one end of something, and it's like, oh, what can I use here that fits, makes the puzzle complete? The
It's
detail
been
thing, though, I was thinking, I always forget the name of the guy who has like his rules for writing
Ralph
songs.
Murphy.
Yeah. Um, I was thinking about the detail thing because of watching some of his stuff recently too. Um,
Hmm.
you know, we want, like, give us detail. Like we want to know specifically, more specifically, what you're talking about. It is a paradox though, isn't it? Because how do you write something that a lot of people can understand, but that you're so specific about? Because it seems like you can't do both. It seems like the more specific you get, the less universal it will be.
Well, one phrase that I heard him use once is that you have to try and invite people to the party, so to speak. It's
Mm.
like you have to give them the window, the opportunity to to take part in the story, even if it's not the story of their life.
Mm.
Like, invite them to the party.
Yeah.
Don't have them just standing outside in the cold. Like, let me in.
So even if your detail is not
I don't know how to do that, by the way.
so even if so and that, so do you think it'd be, you could also say, you could paraphrase that by saying that even if you're not giving detail about their life, you're giving detail that they would be interested in, or they would want to know about.
Like I said, I don't know. I don't know how to do that exactly. I haven't read his book or anything. So
This was the other thing for me is like
yeah,
part of me part of me always like sort of viscerally rebels against the idea of having to write for um write to a certain standard or audience, or like sort of like the artist in me is like, I just want to write what I want to write, and who cares what people think. And I think there's a place for that, but I don't know. For me, sometimes I can be tempted to be a little bit selfish that way too.
yeah,
It's like I just want to say what I want to say, and I don't care how it affects other people. But if it's language, we don't just typically just talk to ourselves. Like we're talking to other people. So
yeah. Sometimes I have a problem where I feel really inspired to write in several different directions. Like I want to just write some nice music that makes people happy, and then tomorrow I feel like I'm gonna say whatever I want, and I don't care what anybody thinks of it. Like, go out in a blaze of glory! Ah! I have some opinions.
I think it's okay though. Like, from one day to the next, or from one project to the next, and I think I'm the kind of person that's always wary of extremes, because I think they can often be problematic.
Well, and obviously, it's probably a good idea to think about your audience.
Yeah.
A little, somewhere in the process.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there is that. There is that artist that just wants to do whatever it wants to do.
Right.
But then there's also the human.
Yeah.
For a second, I'm tempted to say businessman. It's not quite right, because it's not just a business interest that
Yeah.
I think, at least in my case, makes me censor myself in some ways, or takes me down certain paths with certain choices. It's also just a consideration of what I'm saying, and is this actually making the world a better place, for having said it.
Right. Yeah. I think that it's possible to go to the extreme though of only being concerned about, how something is going to sell, or how much money it's going to make potentially, or what's sort of like what's most popular right now. Unless you're right, maybe you're writing for a project, or trying to get your music placed somewhere, that's what you're going for, and that can be fine. But artistically, I don't know. I think those extremes can be dangerous, just for myself, or just for what someone else wants.
And then of course the question just popped into my head, which is, well, making the world a better place could probably be kind of subjective.
Yeah, it's easy to say that.
Because, well, it's not always. I don't think that you can necessarily judge every piece of music by its genre, or by the emotion that it expresses. Like there's something to be said for bad examples in fiction. It's like you can't have a good novel without a villain.
Yeah.
Like you have to go there.
Right.
And that's part of the human experience, and that's part of what helps us to understand our dark side, is expressing it in some ways.
Yeah.
Some of the music that I like personally is incredibly angry, but I find it very helpful at times. It's helped me get process some of my emotions, and it has done some good for me, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like, has it made the world a better place? Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, if it's making you better, it's making the world around you better.
I think. I don't know that it does that to everybody who listens to it.
Yeah, that's true. different people might need different things.
But then the whole thing is so subjective. I mean, art is so subjective as it is.
Yeah.
How much of the responsibility is on the artist and how much is on the listener to determine?
Yeah.
We could talk about this for a long time.
um, I'm a big Tolkien fan.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings and everything he wrote. And one thing that he would talk about um, was like how much of what you write do you want to be like um, do you want what you write to literally tell the reader what to think, or you literally want to say this is what these things represent and this is how you are to interpret it, or do you I think I heard some Tolkien scholar talk about it with the word of applicability, like which they they gave Tolkien's view as that you present something and then it's something that the reader, or in our case the listener, can apply to their own subjective life. So you might be presenting something that is something that might be objectively true, but you're not like saying this is how you are to understand it and this is how you're to apply it to your life. You're saying here it is, but in your life it might look, you have to apply it to your life according to your circumstances. It is interesting though, because if you're not saying enough, if you're not vague, or if you're too vague, or if there's not enough detail, then maybe there isn't enough that the listener or the reader can sort of glean to apply. But if you're too much, they might not feel like they have any freedom for it to be helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. So there must be a balance
Yeah.
between those two extremes
Hmm.
to make it the most good.
Yeah.
To make it the most more
The most goodest can be.
I think our interview in this segment is already longer than my last podcast. I'm just curious, what are you currently writing that you're most excited about? And what well, let's ask that first. What are you most excited about right now?
Hmm.
What's in the works for Fabian?
Honestly, I would say that music like this, like I shared a little bit of. I think I'm most, as far as stuff that I'm writing. I feel most compelled at the moment, and I'm most sort of interested and excited to write stuff that about stuff about what's going on, about not in the sense that I want to be like overtly like vote for this person, or not to that point, but just like this is
You're not trying to make something that's propaganda for
no.
a specific viewpoint. It's just
It's more of a I just there's just so much going on right now, just in life as a human being on this planet. And I'm reading a lot of things and hearing a lot of things, and it just gives me a lot of ideas, and um, I feel like there's a lot to think for all of us to think about and to process, and both things that are going out in the world, and like reflecting on things that are going on within ourselves. So that's the stuff that's most exciting to me right now.
and when you say stuff like this, I mean differentiating it. You're thinking of it in terms of what you're writing about.
Yeah, yeah, more. Yes, true.
I suppose, of course you are.
Yeah. Rewind.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think so. I think for me right now, the stuff that I feel like is worth me writing is starts with like a meaning or an idea to explore, and and then see what I can say about it or how I can explore that. I mean, there are other things that I would like to. There are other projects that I'd like to get back to, and composite things that I've written that I would like to, get recorded, get out there. But right now, this stuff that seems like it has meaning for right now, is what I'd say what I'm most excited about. So so I'll keep writing stuff, submitting it when you have stuff on your podcast to
That's awesome,
sort of
man.
let people inside the process. Yeah,
I'm
I think
really
it's a
glad
great
you're
thing.
here. I really appreciate this. I'm kind of learning how to do this and what I want to do with it as I go.
Mm.
I did not expect us to have this long of a conversation. So I've also been thinking about like how am I gonna format this into like having multiple guests in one show. I might not do it that way. This might turn into more like a one at a time thing, or maybe I'll do it different ways on different shows. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to figure it out. But I really appreciate you doing this with me, man.
Oh yeah, I think it's such a great initiative and a great project, and I'm glad that you're doing it so I can just kind of pop on and be like, hey. Um, but no, I think it's great. I'm excited to see who else you have on and the ideas that they have as well.
Cool. Anything that you want to plug? Any commercials?
Nothing at present. Just I would just say stay tuned. Stay tuned. Be aware of what's going on around you and what's going on in you, and
We are in a jazz combo together. Don't tell anybody.
This is true. So keep tuned to that. Keep tuned for what's going on with Thomas. Keep tuned for stuff that I'm going to put out.
Where do people go to be tuned in to what Fabian does?
To be tuned into what Fabian does. You can check me out on my new musician page on Facebook. I've got a Twitter I'm getting going. Sort of getting my dinosaur fingers into the into the electronic
I'm
world.
off Twitter, man. You're
Exactly. See, exactly. There you go. But just look for me in all the usual places. Your Facebook, your Twitter.
Okay. I'll have links in the description too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Send me whatever links you want me to put in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Let's sign off of
Sounds good.
This segment. So that was my interview with Fabian. That's a long clip. I hope you enjoyed that. It was kind of fun for me to rewatch it. Actually, wow, we covered a lot of ground there. I am gonna wrap this up for this evening. I know I didn't come to you with a song idea. Shame on me. The Songwriter Society podcast is all about setting deadlines and trying to hold ourselves accountable to actually doing creative work. In my defense, I will say I have done some creative work recently. I have been writing, just not for the podcast, for a different project. But I did some writing yesterday. I did a lot of writing yesterday, actually, and it was I feel really good about it. But because rules are rules, and if you don't come with something prepared, then you have to do an improv. I guess that's what I'm going to do to end the podcast, and it's going to be short because I could really use a bathroom break. And I think that's what I'm going to make up a song about. Starting in G. you know how it goes to like, it gives me a little bit of anxiety, which is kind of like what I feel right now. Because I really need a bathroom break. I really need a bathroom break. How do I make it even? I really need a bathroom break. I really need a bathroom break. I don't like this. Does that convey something that's interesting to me? Is that when I'm writing songs, I usually focus on like musical components, like how do you break a song down? I could focus on a melody or a rhythm or a harmony or the lyrics or like the emotional center of the song. I don't always spend a lot of time in the writing process thinking about timbre. Sometimes I use that as a jumping off point. Like I'll just play with some different sounds. I find that really helps to spur my creativity. But that's something I should do more, is like, that's not a good I have to go to the bathroom sound. They say you have to suffer for your art, you know. That sounds ridiculous. It is kind of a ridiculous concept for a song, though. Ah! Ooh, ee. When am I going to get a break? Get a chance to go. This is really difficult to hold in. My feelings about it are wearing thin. I am getting eager now. I'm trying not to have a cow. I really, really, really wanna let it out. How many double entendres can you fit into one song? I really, 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 really gotta go. Ah! Oh, that's better. Oh, what a gross idea and a ridiculous idea. So there you go. That's I guess I really gotta go, man. This has been the Not So Secret Songwriter Society podcast. Oh, Fabian, when you watch this, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we had such a wonderful intellectual discussion, and that I put that idea on the end of it. I'll see you next time, everybody. Look for a schedule for other episodes of the podcast.